Feminist theory for decades has been dominated by what is called the linguistic turn. This approach, shaped by postmodernism and post-structuralism, focuses on how language and discourse construct social reality. Feminists have used this framework to show how gender is culturally produced rather than biologically determined, how power operates through representation, and how categories like woman are discursive formations. These insights have been enormously productive, enabling sophisticated analysis of how knowledge, power, and subjectivity are intertwined. This focus on the linguistic and discursive has come at a cost. The turn to language has led feminist theory to neglect materiality. The body, the environment, biological processes, and the physical world have been treated as blank slates awaiting cultural inscription or as passive matter that only becomes meaningful through discourse. The result is a curious paradox. While there has been an explosion of scholarship on the body, most of it has been confined to analyzing representations of bodies rather than engaging with lived material bodies. This is not just a theoretical problem, it has serious political consequences. If feminists cannot talk about the material reality of bodies, how can we engage with medicine, science, environmental health, or the physical suffering caused by poverty and racism? Material feminism emerges as a response to this impasse, seeking to bring the material back into feminist theory without abandoning the insights of the linguistic turn. Material feminism is not a single doctrine, but a diverse set of approaches that all insist on the importance of materiality. It builds on the insights of post structuralism while pushing beyond them. Rather than choosing between either social constructionism or biological determinism, material feminists seek to understand how the material and the discursive are mutually implicated. This is a new settlement in feminist thought. It is not a return to modernist assumptions about objective reality. Instead, it aims to deconstruct the material discursive dichotomy while retaining both elements without privileging other. This means recognizing that language and discourse shape our understanding of the world, but also that the material world pushes back, acts, and has consequences that cannot be reduced to language. Karen Barrett's concept of agential realism provides a powerful framework for this approach. Drawing on quantum physics, Barrett argues that the world is not composed of discrete things with inherent properties. Phenomena emerge through specific interactions, the ongoing reconfigurations of the world. Matter is not passive, it is a doing, a congealing of agency. Agency is not something that humans possess, it is enacted through interactions that include human and non human actors. This means that the boundaries between nature and culture, human and non human, are not fixed but are continually produced through specific practices. One of the important contributions of material feminism is the reconceptualization of nature. For much of feminist history, nature has been seen as the enemy, the repository of essentialism, biological determinism, and stasis. Feminists have worked to disentangle woman from nature, to escape these oppressive associations, but this flight from nature has left the nature culture dualism intact. Nature remains debased and passive, while culture is elevated and dynamic. Material feminism takes a different approach. Rather than fleeing from nature, it seeks to transform our understanding of what nature is. Nature is not a blank resource for human use, nor a fixed essence that determines destiny. It is agentic, active, and signifying. It pushes back at humans in unpredictable ways. Hurricanes, toxins, climate change, and the biochemistry of depression all demonstrate that nature is a force that interacts with and transforms human practices. Nancy Tuana's essay on the Hurricane Katrina illustrates this vividly. Katrina cannot be understood as either purely natural or purely social. The hurricane gained strength from warm ocean waters, which were themselves affected by climate change driven by human activity. The levees that failed were products of engineering decisions shaped by politics, economics, and racism. The disproportionate suffering of poor and black residents was a result of historical and ongoing social inequalities. There is no sharp divide between nature and culture here, but rather a complex interaction, what Tuana calls viscous porosity. Material feminism also insists on taking the materiality of human bodies seriously. Feminist theory has often treated bodies as purely discursive constructions, as if physical pain, illness, and embodiment were irrelevant to politics. But as Elizabeth Wilson argues, biology itself is not static or determined. It is dynamic, inventive, and capable of transformation. Wilson's work on antidepressants demonstrates this. Rather than seeing Prozac as merely a tool of social control, as anti psychiatry feminists might argue, she explores how the biochemical and psychological are deeply intertwined. The efficacy of antidepressants depends on complex interactions between the gut, the brain, and the cultural environment. The production of serotonin involves not just brain chemistry but diet, metabolism, and the bloodstream. This does not mean that biology determines mental states, nor that culture is irrelevant. It means that biology and culture are ontologically connected. The talking cure and the pill are not opposed but operate through similar logics of relation and empathy. Tobin Seaburs's work on disability challenges the post-structuralist rejection of experience. For some theorists, experience is suspect because it is socially constructed, but Seaburs argues that the experiences of disabled people contain legitimate claims to knowledge. When George Lane had to crawl up the stairs of a courthouse because it was inaccessible to his wheelchair, his experience was not just personal, it was evidence of systemic discrimination. The Supreme Court's decision in his favor recognized that disability experience reveals a pattern of unequal treatment that is socially constructed but also very real. Material feminism insists that social identities are both constructed and real, and experience can be a valuable source of knowledge. The question of race has been particularly vexed in feminist theory. On one hand, race is clearly a social construction. There is no biological basis for social categories. On the other hand, race matters profoundly in material ways. It affects health, wealth, housing, employment, and interactions with the criminal justice system. How can race be both constructed and real? Michael Hames Garcia argues that racial identities emerge from the interaction of history, culture, economics, and material human bodies. Physical differences like skin, color, hair texture, and bone structure are not inherently meaningful, but they become meaningful through their interactions with social ideologies and practices. A black person cannot simply become white through discursive feats because the body's production of melanin is an inseparable component of racial formation. At the same time, the meaning of skin color varies across time and space. Race is a phenomenon that emerges through specific interactions. This has political implications. Rather than abandoning racial identity as a fiction, material feminism argues for creative identity projects that can transform what race means. The Zapatistas of Mexico, for example, constructed a new Indian identity that brought together diverse ethnic groups in a struggle against coloniality. This identity is not a return to an authentic past, but a projection toward a different future. Racial identities can be sites of resistance and transformation, not just oppression. Material feminism opens up new ethical and political possibilities. Because it recognizes that discourses have material consequences, it allows feminists to make comparative judgments about the effects of different practices. We can argue, for example, that the material consequences of environmental racism are worse than those of policies that distribute environmental harms more equitably. This is not relativism, it is a form of ethics grounded in material realities. bodies. Material feminism also transforms environmental politics. If nature is an agentic force rather than passive resource, then environmentalism cannot simply be about preserving nature in a pristine state. It must involve understanding and responding to the complex interactions between human practices and natural systems. Environmental justice movements already do this by tracing how toxins travel across bodies and places, linking occupational health, neighborhood safety, and ecological well being. Material feminism demands new forms of political practice. Political decisions are scripted onto material bodies, and these scripts have consequences that demand a political response. The use of sonograms to image fetuses, for example, has political repercussions that redefine both life and rights. Politics must attend to the material effects of technologies, not just their discursive meanings. Material feminism is an important development in contemporary feminist thought. It addresses the impasse created by the linguistic turn by insisting that matter matters, not just as a topic of discourse, but as an active agentic force in the world. It builds on the insights of post structuralism while pushing beyond them to engage with biology, nature, and the physical world. It opens up new ways of thinking about ethics, politics, and the relationship between humans and non humans.